Welcome to episode 1 of Beyond the Build. In this episode, we basically just want to take some time to introduce ourselves so you get a sense of our backgrounds, where we came from, and then we'll then talk about what the episode is about. Sorry, we'll talk about what the podcast will be about moving forward. But first, I'll have my co-host introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name's Ope Okunsoya. But that doesn't work in corporate America, so everybody just calls me Ope. But yeah, I'm a software engineer.
Senior software engineer.
I'm a senior software engineer at Zillow. And yeah, I've been at Zillow for 5 years. It's been a journey. It's been fun. It's been frustrating. It's been all of the emotions as a software engineer. So yeah, that's the short version of who I am. Hey Umar, you want to go?
Yes, my name is Umar. By the time this comes out, I will be a software engineer at Netflix.
Woo!
I was a software engineer at Microsoft for around 5 years and recently joined the team at Netflix in February 2025. So, yeah, the podcast Beyond the Build. So, for some context, Ope bought a house across the street from me. Literally across the street. Like, I can see his door from my door, literally across the street.
Yep.
And we have a lot of conversations about tech, right? About just the software engineering career, whether it's about, hey, I'm going through this with my team. I'm going through this with my manager. I'm going through this with this principal on my team that doesn't want to help me, or, trying to get promoted.
Yep. Or like just dealing with like you're trying to mentor people, you're trying to figure out how to go about some tough conversations, or like you're thinking through some very rough thing and I just want like a sounding board. And yeah, it just came to a thing where I'll be like, hey Umar, what's up? Are you in?
Yeah.
I would have like long talks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like some of the seed for how we started to think about doing this.
Yeah. And in December 2024, we're sitting in your living room and I was like, hey, why don't we turn this into a podcast? Literally. I remember we're having a conversation specifically about how I used Cursor AI in my work and how I kind of felt like an imposter a little bit because when it wasn't giving me what I wanted, I was stuck, right? I was like, hey, I have no idea I didn't even know where to start even debugging this thing. Yeah. And yeah, we had that conversation and then you then shared your experience about using AI and how, sometimes it, we'll definitely get into that. But the whole idea is we have these conversations all the time. Why not just turn it into a podcast where we talk about some technical part of tech and a lot of non-technical part of tech, the part that people don't talk about, and specifically our experiences being software engineers. We are going to bring in guests as we see fit for specific episodes that maybe I'll leave the experiences, may not necessarily tell the full story. We'll bring in people for those, and otherwise it's just me and you having conversations.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Like we always do.
Like we always do, literally. Okay, yeah, that is Beyond the Build. Do you want to go into a little bit more about your background, how you got to Zillow and all of that, and then I'll go into mine, and then we'll now end this one?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, a little bit about how did I get to being a software engineer at Zillow.
Yeah.
I finished my first degree in 2011. Worked in Covenant, by the way.
Covenant University?
Yeah, Covenant University. Very controversial university for Nigerians. But finished 2011. And about 2012-ish, I started to work in InterSwitch. And it was really, really good for at least the first 2 to 3 years. I worked on software that was deployed at banks all across like Nigeria and Africa that managed their transactions and drove their ATMs. All your cards were off of those systems. So basically, if you use like a UBA, for example, or if you use like any big Nigerian bank, and you do a payment anywhere, the only way it gets to the bank is through the software that I managed at that time. So we had it deployed at the banks, right? And it was interesting for the first 2 or 3 years. And then I just stopped learning and there wasn't room to learn any longer. And I was like, wait, I am too young not to learn. So at some point I started managing people, but like I just felt very worried that I wasn't learning. And then, I was trying to solve some problems that just required like big data at scale. And I couldn't solve them because I didn't have the technical chops to solve them. And I also was very difficult to convince my managers about, hey, like these problems are big enough that if we actually do solve them, they deliver a lot of value to our customers. So it was a mixture of that. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go to grad school and just go learn all this stuff. So yeah, packed my bags 2018, and then moved to Columbia, Missouri from Lagos, Nigeria. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was very stressful. Learned a lot in grad school. I remember my first class. Professor was James Keller. It was some linear algebra type stuff to underlie like deep learning. And at the end of that class, I was having a panic attack because all of the stuff he was talking about that everybody in the class was nodding their head to, I don't even remember if they taught me that in my undergrad program. So yeah, it was a whole thing. I was like, hey, I just went to him. I was like, hey, this stuff, I don't understand any of these things. But yeah, it was a very stressful journey for me. But you know what? 3 semesters, got my graduate degree, interned in the summer of 2019 at Zillow, and then they gave me an offer to come back. And as soon as they gave me that offer, I went back to grad school and I was like, hey, this semester that I'm in now, I got to finish the semester. I don't care what I have to do. I'm out this semester.
You took as many credits as you could.
Oh yeah, I took a ton of credits, and I worked in a lab all through. So like I kind of had already done all the thesis work already, so it kind of made it easier for me. And yeah, then moved to Seattle, February 2020, just at the start of COVID. Lucky I did because everybody got their offers retracted. But yeah, it was a good time. And I've been at Zillow since. Gotten a promotion. I've worked on like really interesting projects. I work with really interesting people. I own a couple of like really important products. As an engineer, as I'm an engineering lead for a couple of really important products in Zillow. And yes, I've loved it so far.
Can you give a high level of the products and services you own at a very high level? So someone opens Zillow. I know, but I know they don't know.
Fair.
But someone opens Zillow. How does your work kind of impact or play into the experience that they have? Because I know you do a lot with big data at Zillow.
Yeah. So I basically own all the data products that are used for analytics in the property and listing space. So if you go to Zillow, you're probably looking at the rental listing or a for sale listing. What goes on the front end, I don't own that. I kind of sometimes advise on stuff that goes on the front end, but any other thing that has to deal with like machine learning or like internal reporting. So for example, if you look at a home on Zillow, you might see like a coming soon thing, right, on that. I don't own the coming soon thing, but the way they are able to build that feature is off of systems that I own. So I have like real-time systems that sends data to them as a listing gets created, and then they put the tag and then send that to the front end. So I own like basically every system in Zillow and all the other products that deliver property and listing data.
Property and listing data at Zillow. That's huge.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah,
It's hell as well.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, without property and listing, there is no Zillow, right?
Fair.
So yeah, I can imagine why it'd be huge. Okay. My name is Umar. I think most of you guys already know me. This will be going on most of my social media channels. So I'll keep the intro short. Went to school in Iowa State University. Started with aerospace engineering, switched to software because of a few reasons. I was bored with aerospace and I wanted something more hands-on. So I switched to software. And then from there, got my first internship just based on learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning. They were acquired by LinkedIn. And so from then it was just like, yo, I can teach myself stuff and like build stuff that I get to interact with every day and I can get a job for it. Bet, literally, say less. And from there it was just building projects, then doing internships in a bunch of places. And I failed a bunch of FANG interviews. Google came knocking, I think after like 2 or 3 internships, and after just having a decent resume, Google will come knocking, right? Microsoft as well if you apply. And I failed all those ones. And then my final year, I was like, yo, chairman, you guys, you have to lock it up. You know what I mean? So yeah, I practiced as much as I could, and then I actually fell in love with the process of just that technical interviewing, lead code, doing all that, and ended at Microsoft. When I joined Microsoft, I was the only software engineer on my team initially, and my whole role was just to help them automate processes that they had. So I worked with a lot of networking engineers. So you could as well say I was a software automation engineer. I just built software that automated stuff, and then did that for a little bit and then realized, yeah, there's a lot more that I could be doing with just software. And my products or my services at the time they weren't, what's the word I'm looking for? Regular business processes could go on without them.
Fair.
And then as I started learning and I started seeing, layoffs and all that stuff, I was like, all right, we need to, we need to position ourselves in a place where they just can't say, hey, from you to you to you to you,
Yeah.
just clear out. And so I ended up leaving my old team and then joining Substrate. So Substrate is the largest data organization in the world. It's still within Microsoft. They basically are the data store layer for all of Office 365. And then I actually joined the Spartans team in Substrate, and they basically just assign us to special projects to go work on for 6 months to a year increments based on what you want. And I was on the File Score project. So the Files APIs for SharePoint, OneDrive, and basically any file ingestion for Office 365. And then did that for a bit. And by the time you're listening to this, I will be at Netflix. I don't know. I know the team that I'll be working on, but I don't know what I'm doing yet. So it's going to be a very, very interesting journey. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit about Ope as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Feel free to leave them anywhere. And yeah, anything you want to say to close out this episode?
Yeah, I really look forward to the podcast and the next episodes, and just exploring all the many things we talk about off air, like just exploring that on air a bit.
Yeah, same, man. I think there's so many there's so many conversations that we've had, and I'm like, yo, I didn't even think about it that way. And one of them was how, we'll talk about it. But you had mentioned, I think it hit me that day. I was going through a rut. I was like, man, I haven't pushed code in like 1 week and 2 weeks. And you were like, well, sometimes the scale of the problems you're working with, you can't look for progress day by day or week by week, right? It has to be like in months increments, right? What have you been able to accomplish? And I was like, I never actually thought about it that way. And so we'll have a lot of conversations like that, just insight into how to think about your work and all the other stuff that we've said. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yep, same here.
Thanks for joining, and we will catch you in the next one. All right.